Alright, well, as I said in the latest acquisition video, I grabbed this. Eaters. Presented by Uwe Boll. Presented. Apparently, he had nothing to do with the creativity of this film. I can't really say whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. A lot of the Uwe Boll films I've seen just... not that they sucked. A lot of them just weren't that good. And, yeah, I've heard a few interviews with Uwe, and I understand some of the problems that he went through in getting some of the films done, and that a lot of the choices really weren't his as to what to do. So going into Eaters, I kind of expected a little chaos, I guess you would say. Like, you'd sit there and say, okay, this actor doesn't want to be there, he didn't have time to recast, like that kind of stuff. Honestly, Eaters... I don't really have that much to say about this film. Eaters is not a bad film. Alright, let me start out first with the visuals. The production on this is fantastic. This looks like a really good film. The visuals in it are amazing. The best way I can compare it, I guess, would be to say something like 300, in a way. It looks like it was meant to be a black and white film, and there was just a little color added to it. I really don't know if that's just how they shot with the lighting, or if that was a post-production thing, like a filter. But this movie just looks fantastic. And I really got into it. But at the same time, I was greatly let down just because there wasn't much story to go with it. The whole concept of Eaters is the end of the world has come. There was a plague. They explain it as like a worm that gets into people's bodies and turns them more into zombies. And yeah, that's exactly what this is. It's a zombie film, but it's more like a end of the world drama than anything. Has to do with two main characters who go out for survivalists, for people that survived the plague, named Igor and Alex. I actually had to wait until the credits to make sure Igor was the character's name. I thought it was a nickname. But those are the main two characters, and they're tasked by a doctor whose name is Gino. Gino, I think it was, Gino. They go out to get more living specimens, meaning the undead. And when they go out, it's basically just a giant road trip, is what it all boils down to. The main thing, one of the things I really picked up on, and one of the biggest problems I had, the driving sequences. Clearly green screen background, the car is shaking, like visually because of the backgrounds, and they're just kind of like bobbing back and forth like this all the time, even when the car's not shaking. And sometimes the car will just shake, and you would imagine a huge bump where they might just jump up like that. They don't. This is the entire thing that they do. So that was one of the things that kind of pulled me out of the film, but kind of not, because I can understand why they did that. Looked like the roads were very small, so following them in cars might not have been too possible. So when you look at it that way, that's a little more understandable, and you can kind of give them a little leeway. The zombies actually looked pretty good in this film. Some of the gore as well, but this wasn't really a huge gore flick. There weren't a lot of death scenes either, which kind of saddened me. Especially considering the road trip issue, and the fact that as they're going along, Igor turns to Alex and says that they have a score to settle with, I believe it was Sector B, which was overrun by a group of neo-Nazis. So they go over there. One of the things that they did was they would have humans versus zombies. They would have two people there, one bullet to kill the zombie, and if you don't kill the zombie with the bullet, the zombie gets to you and you basically die. That's the whole point of it. So survival of the fittest was the theme with them. And again, they just largely cut away. And that saddened me. I mean, every once in a while you would see some shots of it during that, or during other scenes involving the zombies. And for the most part, you don't actually see the people die in the film. It's all, like, off-screen death. It kind of gets boring, especially with the fact that the action itself is pretty boring. But I'll get to that in a little bit. As eventually they leave Sector B, and they come across a radio broadcast. And it turns out that they think this is the plague spreader. And the plague spreader is the one who supposedly started the plague. So they start following it, and they find the location, they go in, and there's this church and a guy protecting a girl. And they come to find out that the guy protecting the girl is a priest, and he wound up killing people and eating them to survive to protect this girl. And the girl winds up being the daughter of the spreader, apparently, the plague spreader. Her name was... Crap. I don't think I actually wrote her name down. I don't think I cared enough. Christina or something? I don't know. Very, very minimal role. Doesn't really talk much. Just gives a little bit of background, but it's just not even necessary. There's also a subplot going on between the first Doctor you see, Gino, and a woman who actually used to be Alex's fiancée, girlfriend, something like that. And I think her name was Alexis. I don't know. I didn't even really catch the name as the credits go up. Anyway, she... Well, I'm not going to get into spoil. She has something to do with the plague, apparently. And she's already a zombie in the film. So, basically, they come to find out, Igor and Alex go to another sector, Sector F, and they come to find out that Gino has been doing testing on other zombies, and keeping the older doctor from the flashbacks as a prisoner to continue the experiments. And what he's doing is making them smarter. He's trying to create like a new breed with the dead. He thinks it's an evolutionary step, and he has to figure out how to do it, how to make it work out. So as they get there, the girl is kidnapped by one of the zombies, and you think she's gonna die, but that's not really what happens. And they come to find out there are zombies walking around with weapons, which I found was extremely underused. It would have been interesting to see a group that actually had the intelligence from experimentation to use weaponry, but they didn't get to use it. Then there were some zombies they happened across that actually, they talked. They had a very minimal intellect and vocabulary. And they come to find out this is all an idea, an experiment from one of the doctors. So they leave, they race back, and they come to find out that Gino is using Alexis to try and create this master race, because he's trying to get the zombies, like the dead and the dead, to have sex and intercourse and make babies, lots of babies. But apparently the babies are born dead. So his thought, I'm gonna have sex with a zombie. Which in this film is apparently a thing, because there are plenty of porno mags that Igor is reading called Ladies and Corpse. Or I think that was the title. It could be Girls and Corpse. I don't know. Which I'm assuming women with zombies. I don't know. Yeah, so they're on their way back. They get ambushed by the Nazis again. And this leads to the biggest fight scene of them all. And it was the most boring. It was like watching a wrestling training session. It's just... I don't know. It just was not entertaining. It was boring. A few moves were done. The actual interesting aspect, the neo-Nazis had a leader that looked like Hitler in a sense. Not a dead ringer, but kind of, a mustache, and tried to be him. I guess he tries to force the girl to give him oral sex. I don't know if he succeeds or not, because a lot of it, again, is off camera. She winds up stabbing him, and I believe cuts off his junk. I don't know what's going on, because, again, everything's just off screen. All the action is off screen. All the shit that you want to see. All this stuff that's going on. I don't want to see a teenager giving a fat Hitler a blowjob, but a lot of the stuff that is interesting and would feed into the action or tension of a scene is just off screen. So you really just can't care too much about what's going on. And especially when that fight scene between the neo-Nazis and Igor and Alex, it's interrupted by the girl who comes down with a machine gun and just shoots everybody. This is, okay, this is mildly interesting. Oh, they're all dead. Lovely. Yeah, so they race back, there's a bomb plan, and this is like the last 10 minutes of the film. They finally tell you, oh, what's going to happen, what's going on, what the plan is. 10 minutes into the film, or 10 minutes to the end of the film, I'm sorry, they find that there is a bomb. And, of course, the girl just randomly cuts a wire. Hey, bomb's good, we're fine. And the entire time, Gino knocked out Alex, and goes into full exposition, not expedition, full exposition mode, and basically goes off like every action movie villain in the world. Instead of doing what he's supposed to, he basically tells him what he's gonna do. And this leads to the quickest death of the main villain ever. Does that sound like it's really intense and enjoyable? Not really. Story honestly could have been a hell of a lot better. But it was okay enough to kind of get into. I don't know. Eaters, I wouldn't really say this is a fantastic film or an important zombie film. But it's not bad. It's boring as far as the story goes. A lot of the action happens off-screen, which is just... The only thing I can understand it with is budget. That'd be the only thing. I don't know. It comes with 2 soundtracks. This was an Italian film. My fiance's holding the cat. Anyhow, this is an Italian film. The English dub is not that great. I watched some of it in the Italian version, the original one. It sounds a lot better, but the English version is not that bad. Honestly. I don't know. I'll give it a 5.5. She wants to make the cat guest, I guess. Ooh. I'll give it a 5.5. I mean, visually, it's a fantastic film. Story could have been a lot better. The effects were mildly okay. You took her away. I was gonna pet her. I tell you, if you're gonna shove the cat into the video, let me pet her. I lost my train of thought. Alright, anyhow. It's 95 minutes. If you got 95 minutes to kill, you won't regret watching this film, especially for the visuals. It really is a fantastic visual feast. Everything was clearly shot in high-definition cameras. Even for a regular DVD, everything looks crisp. Very, very crisp. I just really wish... I could see this film being pretty good in 3D. But there isn't really much to use the 3D on. That's the only problem. Could have used a little more action, a little more believable action. That's about it. Overall, Eaters... If you go into it expecting typical bad Uwe Boll, I don't know. That's kind of what I went into it. I expected it to be a pretty bad film. Not necessarily wretched, but, you know, moderately bad. I was pleasantly surprised by what this film was. So, like I said, I'm going to give it a 5.5. If you happen to see it, I paid $10 for this thing today. I don't know if I would pay $10 knowing what this is like. If you can find it on sale, or even if you can rent it somewhere, it's worth a rent, at least. It's something that, for the zombie fanatic, post-apocalyptic world enjoyer, it's a good film. It's worth the time. 5.5. Check it out if you get the chance. I wouldn't recommend buying it, though.